There is a place in the universe that commands the fear and reverence of countless civilizations, a world so ancient, so vast, it has been spoken of only in hushed tones and riddles. This planet, known to its inhabitants simply as the Throne, has ruled the cosmos with an iron grip since time itself began to take form. On its surface, cities of unimaginable scale rise and fall, eternally bathed in the cold light of distant stars. The Throne's dominion is absolute, its will enforced by forces so immense that entire star systems have been erased from existence for mere acts of defiance. Yet, among all the worlds over which the Throne casts its shadow, there is one it dares not approach, a small, blue planet, lost among the unremarkable stars of a distant galaxy, a world that should be insignificant Earth. In the grand halls of the Throne, the legends of Earth are whispered among the few who know of its existence. To speak of it is to evoke memories of an ancient shame, a wound that festers in the heart of their king. It is said that the king himself, the one who holds dominion over the universe, has often been found in a solitary place, kneeling, facing this blue planet. His head bowed, his lips moving in a murmur of words no one can comprehend. Some say he atones for a crime committed long ago, a crime so grave that it has left him in perpetual penance. The crime of his son, a god-like being whose name has been stricken from every record, whose very memory is a forbidden subject. It is said that this son, in his arrogance, brought ruin upon the universe by an act committed on Earth. What exactly transpired remains a mystery, guarded jealously by the king himself. But the ramifications were such that the entire universe felt its tremors. No one approaches Earth, not because of the planet's defenses, of which there are none, but because of the legend that surrounds it. A legend of 5 beings whom the Throne's own people call Galactic Monsters. Creatures so terrifying, so incomprehensibly powerful, that they could shake the foundations of the Throne itself. But the humans on Earth call them something else adorable. How this group came to be, how they ascended to such heights, is a tale shrouded in mystery, spoken of only in fragmented whispers. It begins, as all legends do, with love and betrayal, with life and death intertwined in a dance as old as the stars themselves. The people of the Throne remember the arrival of a being on Earth, a visitor from a world unknown, older than time, older than laws, who took the form of a human. It is said he fell in love with a human woman, a creature as fragile as a whisper, yet possessing a spirit that could not be broken. The being, a member of a race that claimed to be the first to awaken to sentience, had seen countless epochs pass, yet in the eyes of this human woman, he saw something he had never encountered before, a spark of life that defied the cold inevitability of the universe. Their love was a secret, hidden from the prying eyes of both human and alien alike. But secrets have a way of unraveling, and so it was with them. A god-like prince from the Throne, sent to observe the lesser worlds, found himself drawn to Earth, drawn to the very same woman. Unlike the being who loved her, the prince saw her not as an equal, but as a possession to be claimed. When she rejected him, his pride turned to wrath, and in a moment of uncontrollable rage, he struck her down. The being, shattered by grief, sought only to mourn in peace, but the woman's family, filled with righteous fury, sought to avenge her death. In a public square, under the indifferent gaze of the stars, they confronted the prince. But they were not warriors, they were simple folk, unarmed and unprepared. The prince, unchallenged for eons, cut them down where they stood, their blood staining the earth as the being watched in silence, too lost in his own sorrow to resist. But this was no ordinary being. Though his body was destroyed, he was of a race that did not die in the way others understood. His essence, his very soul, retreated into the earth, waiting, gathering strength for the time when he would be reborn. And as he waited, the universe shifted. The Throne, sensing the disturbance, acted swiftly and brutally, erasing all traces of the event. A city was wiped from existence, its people turned to dust by a weapon born of nightmare. When the being was reborn, he was found by a monk, a man of deep faith and deeper secrets, who took him in as his own son. The child, though human in form, possessed eyes that saw through the fabric of reality, eyes that held within them the memory of a time before time. He grew, but always there was a sense of something more within him, something that set him apart from those around him. And so, the legend of Earth began. A legend of a small blue planet that stands alone in the vastness of space, a planet that the most powerful beings in the universe fear to approach. For on that planet, it is said, reside the Galactic Monsters, beings who once shook the throne to its core, beings who still watch over the Earth, ensuring that no harm comes to its people. And in the halls of the throne, the king still kneels, still murmurs his incomprehensible words, facing that distant blue world, a reminder to all who rule the universe that there are forces beyond even their understanding, forces that can never be controlled, only respected. The colossal throne loomed in the void of space, a universe unto itself. Its surface was an endless expanse of towering structures and churning cities, all bathed in an artificial light that never flickered or waned. The air within was a symphony of purpose and authority, every sound carefully controlled, every movement precise. Here, power and control were not abstract concepts but tangible realities. Yet, despite its monumental presence, the throne was not without its concerns. Among its corridors and halls, there was an ever-present tension, a whisper of unease that spoke of a distant, blue planet, a place that seemed almost insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. The Earth, small and unremarkable, was an enigma wrapped in layers of ancient fear and secrecy. In a secluded chamber of the throne, a high-ranking official known only as the Keeper of Legends paced restlessly. His duties included preserving the history and myths of the throne's dominion, but the legend of Earth had always been a source of unease. He had heard the story countless times, each retelling more shrouded in mystery than the last. Why does the king remain obsessed with this Earth? He mused aloud, his voice echoing in the emptiness of the chamber. Why does he kneel, facing that insignificant world, while the universe expands and evolves? The answer was buried deep within the annals of history, but it was a question that had haunted the keeper for years. According to the legends, the king's obsession stemmed from an ancient act of betrayal and a subsequent act of penance that had shaped the universe's balance. But what had happened was never fully revealed, only hinted at through fragments and whispers. The story that haunted the throne's corridors was one of love and destruction. It spoke of a time when a being from beyond the universe fell in love with a human woman. She was a figure of fragility and strength, her life a fleeting flame in the grand expanse of time. Their love was a forbidden fruit, and its consequences were far-reaching. The prince, a scion of the throne's ruling class, had visited Earth and, upon finding the woman, became enamored with her. But love, when tainted by arrogance and entitlement, can turn destructive. When the woman rejected him, the prince's pride shattered, and he exacted a brutal vengeance. His rage led to the woman's death and the slaughter of her family, a tragedy witnessed by the being who loved her. The being's response to the tragedy was not one of revenge, but of grief. His mourning was a silent, profound agony that left him vulnerable. In that state, the being was unable to protect his beloved's kin, and they were mercilessly slaughtered. The prince's actions sent ripples of devastation through the universe, prompting the throne to act with a brutality that erased the city from existence. It was a story of destruction, but it was also a story of survival. The being, though his body was destroyed, was of a race that did not die easily. His essence retreated into the earth, and when he was reborn, he was found by a monk who took him in. The child grew up in secrecy, his true nature hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. Years passed, and the child, now a young man, was unaware of his origins. His eyes, however, were a testament to his otherworldly heritage, reflecting the weight of countless eons. His presence was marked by an aura of calm and an unsettling awareness that set him apart from those around him. He lived among humans, forming bonds and connections, yet there was always a sense of something greater within him. One day, as the young man grew into adulthood, the throne's high command took notice of an anomaly. Reports of strange occurrences on Earth reached them, an inexplicable presence that resonated with ancient power. The throne's rulers, still wary of the blue planet, dispatched an emissary to investigate. The emissary was a young prince of the throne, not yet fully understanding the weight of his lineage. He arrived on Earth under the guise of a diplomatic envoy, tasked with observing the mysterious being. His mission was to assess the potential threat or significance of the young man, who had become a symbol of the old legend. When the emissary encountered the young man, he was struck by the profound sense of history and destiny that seemed to surround him. The emissary, though powerful and privileged, was not immune to the awe that the young man inspired. The human, with his piercing eyes and quiet strength, represented a mystery that defied the throne's understanding. Their meeting was not one of confrontation, but of unspoken recognition. The emissary saw in the young man a reflection of something lost to the throne's own history, a reminder of a time when beings were not bound by the rigid structures of power and control. The young man, in turn, sensed the weight of the emissary's presence, understanding that their encounter was a convergence of past and future. But the emissary's visit was not to last. When he returned to the throne, he carried with him a new understanding, a realization that the being from Earth was not a mere relic of a forgotten legend, but a living embodiment of something greater. The emissary's report was met with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The throne's rulers once again reminded of the ancient warning that had kept them from Earth. As the emissary departed, the young man remained on Earth, his journey only beginning. The universe, with all its grandeur and mystery, was now intricately linked with the blue planet in ways that neither he nor the throne fully understood. The void of space seemed almost indifferent as the throne's emissary left Earth, the blue planet fading into the distance behind him. Yet, his mind was still haunted by the brief encounter. What he had seen, or rather what he had felt, was not merely a matter of physical presence. It was an echo of something ancient and profound, a whisper from the depths of time. Back on the throne, the emissary's report stirred a quiet storm among the ruling class. The revelation that Earth was not just a forgotten corner of the universe, but a significant player in an ancient legend unsettled them deeply. The legend, it seemed, was not a mere myth, but a reality that continued to shape the universe in unexpected ways. In the cold, polished chambers of the throne, a gathering of high-ranking officials convened to deliberate the implications of the emissary's findings. Their faces, impassive and stern, betrayed no emotion, but their eyes flickered with a hidden unease. The discussion was tense, with each leader grappling with the implications of a being who could stir the core of their existence. "That planet," one of the leaders began, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of anxiety, "is supposed to be insignificant. Yet, every time we approach it, we encounter something inexplicable. The young prince who visited it has returned with more questions than answers. What does it mean?" Another leader, her gaze distant, replied, "The king's punishment is known. We must acknowledge the being's power, but our own fear must be kept in check. Earth has always been a place of mystery, a reminder of our own failings." Their conversation turned to the being from Earth, whose existence had long been a matter of speculation. The ancient tales spoke of a race of beings that predated time itself, primordial entities whose actions had inadvertently shaped the universe. But the stories were vague, filled with gaps and contradictions. What was known was that these beings had a profound connection to Earth, a connection that seemed to defy the throne's understanding. As the leader spoke, the emissary's own thoughts were troubled. He had seen the young man's eyes that held a depth and clarity far beyond what should be possible for any being, let alone a human. The emissary had felt a kinship with a young man, a recognition of something lost or forgotten in his own world. It was an unsettling realization that perhaps their power, their dominance, was not as absolute as they had believed. On Earth, the young man continued his life in the small, unassuming town that had become his home. His daily existence was a blend of normalcy and isolation, marked by an awareness that set him apart from those around him. He worked quietly, made few friends, and kept to himself. His life, though outwardly simple, was imbued with a sense of purpose that he could not fully articulate. One evening, as he walked home from his modest job at a local library, he found himself reflecting on the strange sensations that had begun to stir within him. Ever since the emissary's visit, there had been a subtle shift, a sense of being watched, of a growing awareness that something significant was drawing closer. It was not fear, but a deep, almost instinctive understanding that his life was on the brink of a profound change. That night, as he lay in his small, dimly lit apartment, he was suddenly awoken by a series of vivid dreams. They were not mere dreams but fragmented glimpses of another world, a place of immense power and cold, indifferent authority. In these dreams, he saw flashes of the throne, its towering spires and relentless machinery, as well as glimpses of the ancient beings who had once walked the earth. The dreams left him with a deep sense of disquiet. He knew that they were more than just dreams. They were echoes of a forgotten truth, remnants of a past that was reaching out to him. As he tried to piece together the fragments, he felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to seek answers. He needed to understand why these dreams were surfacing now and what they meant for his future. Driven by this newfound urgency, he began to delve into the old legends and myths that had once fascinated him as a child. He sought out ancient texts and obscure references, piecing together the scattered clues about the primordial beings and their connection to Earth. His research was methodical, driven by an unspoken determination to uncover the hidden truths of his past. At the same time, the throne's rulers continued their scrutiny of Earth from afar. They dispatched another envoy, this one more experienced and secretive, tasked with a more thorough investigation. The envoy's presence was cloaked in shadows, his arrival unnoticed by the inhabitants of Earth. His mission was clear: to gather more information on the young man and determine the potential threat he posed. The envoy observed the young man from a distance, noting his behavior and interactions. He saw the quiet determination in his eyes, the way he seemed to carry the weight of unspoken knowledge. The envoy's observations were meticulous, and he reported back to the throne with a mix of awe and apprehension. As the young man's search for answers continued, he found himself drawn to an ancient relic, a hidden artifact that seemed to resonate with the energy of his dreams. It was a small, intricately carved stone, its surface etched with symbols that were both familiar and foreign. The stone seemed to pulse with a subtle, rhythmic energy, as if it were alive with the echoes of a distant past. Holding the artifact, the young man felt a surge of connection. It was as if the relic was a key to unlocking the mysteries that had plagued him. The more he studied it, the more he felt the veil between his current life and the ancient past lifting. He was on the cusp of discovering something that would not only explain his own existence, but also reveal the true nature of the beings who had shaped the universe. The small, ancient stone sat in the young man's hand, its weight a tangible reminder of the journey ahead. The carved symbols seemed to shift under the dim light of his study, casting fleeting shadows that danced across the walls. Each etching on the stone whispered secrets of a bygone era, drawing him deeper into its mystery. He sat at his desk, surrounded by the scattered remnants of his research. Old books lay open, their pages yellowed with age, and handwritten notes were strewn across the table. His eyes were focused, scanning the surface of the artifact with an intensity that betrayed his desperation for answers. The stone felt alive, a pulsating force that resonated with an ancient energy. As he traced the symbols with his fingertips, he felt a connection to something vast and profound. It was as if the artifact was reaching out to him, guiding him towards a revelation that had long been hidden. Outside, the world continued its usual rhythm. Cars passed by, and people went about their lives, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding within the young man's apartment. The city itself seemed a world away from the ancient mysteries that now occupied his thoughts. Yet, the stone seemed to bridge the gap between his mundane existence and the vast, unknown universe. He carefully placed the artifact on the table and leaned back, his mind racing. What was this object, and how did it relate to the legends of his people? Why had it appeared now, at a moment when he was grappling with the echoes of his dreams and the scrutiny of the throne? The answers were just out of reach, and the more he studied the stone, the more he realized that its secrets were deeply intertwined with his own past. As he pondered, a sudden knock at the door jolted him from his reverie. He opened it to find a courier standing outside, holding a package. The courier nodded briefly before leaving, and the young man took the package inside, feeling a sense of foreboding. He carefully opened the package to reveal a single letter and a small, leather-bound book. The letter was from an anonymous sender, and contained a simple message: the answers you seek are closer than you think. Follow the path of the ancients. The book was old, its cover worn and faded. He opened it to find a collection of drawings and writings that seemed to align with the symbols on the artifact. There were descriptions of ancient beings, maps of forgotten places, and accounts of legendary events. The more he read, the more he realized that the book was a guide, a piece of a puzzle that had been waiting for him to discover. With renewed determination, he set aside his previous research and began studying the new material. He cross-referenced the symbols on the artifact with those in the book, slowly piecing together the fragments of a story that had been buried for centuries. As he delved deeper, he stumbled upon a description of an ancient ritual, a ceremony performed by the primordial beings to maintain balance and protect their legacy. The ritual was said to involve a powerful artifact, one that could influence the very fabric of reality. The description was vague, but suggested that the artifact in his possession was a key to unlocking the full extent of this ritual. The more he learned, the clearer it became that the artifact was not just a relic, but a vital component of a larger narrative. It was a link to the primordial beings and their connection to Earth, a connection that had shaped the course of history in ways he was only beginning to understand. Meanwhile, the envoy from the throne continued his covert observations, gathering information on the young man's activities. He noted the intense focus with which the young man approached his research and the subtle changes in his demeanor. The envoy could sense that something significant was unfolding, something that might alter the balance of power between Earth and the throne. The throne's leaders remained deeply invested in monitoring the situation, their concerns growing with each passing day. They were aware that their own understanding of the universe was being challenged by the events on Earth. The presence of the artifact and the young man's pursuit of knowledge posed a potential threat that could not be ignored. Back in his apartment, the young man felt a growing sense of urgency. The information he had uncovered pointed to a hidden truth that was both exhilarating and daunting. He knew that he was on the verge of discovering something monumental, something that could reshape his understanding of the universe and his place within it. He continued his research with a sense of purpose, driven by the knowledge that he was uncovering the threads of an ancient story. The more he learned, the more he felt a deep connection to the primordial beings and their legacy. It was as if he was stepping into a role that had been waiting for him all along, a role that would challenge him to confront the mysteries of his past and the uncertainties of his future. The quiet of the evening settled over the young man's apartment like a shroud, broken only by the soft rustle of turning pages. He sat hunched over the ancient book, illuminated by the warm glow of his desk lamp. His focus was absolute, each symbol and inscription in the book merging with the memories of the artifact. He was piecing together a history that had been hidden for centuries, one that hinted at connections between Earth and the primordial beings. Outside, the city buzzed with the hum of everyday life. The usual sounds, distant sirens, murmurs of conversation, the occasional laughter seemed inconsequential against the weight of the revelations unfolding within his study. It was as if the young man was isolated in a different realm, one where the past and present collided in a delicate dance. His eyes fell upon a particularly intricate set of symbols, their meanings slowly becoming clearer as he continued his research. The symbols spoke of a ceremony performed by the primordial beings, a ritual that involved a sacred artifact, an artifact that was now in his possession. The text was sparse but conveyed a sense of urgency and gravity. It described the artifact as a conduit to ancient power, a link between worlds, and a safeguard against the encroaching darkness that threatened the balance of existence. He paused, staring at the symbols with a growing sense of unease. The implications were profound. If the artifact held such power, what did that mean for him and for Earth? Was he merely a custodian of this power, or was there a larger role he was destined to play? As he pondered these questions, a sharp knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. He rose from his seat and opened the door to find a figure standing in the dimly lit hallway. It was an elderly woman, her face etched with lines of wisdom and weariness. She held a small box tightly in her hands, her eyes reflecting a mix of hope and trepidation. "I've been looking for you," she said softly. "I have something you need to see." The young man took the box and invited her inside. As she settled into a chair, he opened the box to find a collection of artifacts pieces that seemed to resonate with the same energy as the artifact he had been studying. There were fragments of ancient scrolls, small tokens, and an intricately crafted pendant. "This belonged to my family," the woman explained. "We have guarded these artifacts for generations, waiting for someone who could understand their true significance. You're the one we've been waiting for." The revelation was both startling and overwhelming. The woman's family had been custodians of ancient knowledge, their lives dedicated to preserving the secrets of the primordial beings. She had come to him because she believed he was the one meant to unlock the full potential of these artifacts. As the young man examined the items, he felt a profound connection to the past. The pendant, in particular, seemed to hold a special significance. Its design matched the symbols on the artifact, and it emanated a faint, soothing light. The woman shared stories of her ancestors, their struggles and sacrifices in preserving the ancient knowledge. She spoke of the primordial beings and their connection to Earth, describing a time when they had walked among humans as guardians and guides. Her family had been part of a larger network, working in secrecy to protect the legacy of these ancient beings. The young man listened intently, absorbing the gravity of the woman's words. He realized that his quest was not just about understanding the artifact, but also about connecting with a lineage that had shaped human history. The ancient beings were not merely legends. They were part of a continuum that stretched from the dawn of time to the present day. As the evening wore on, the young man and the woman worked together, deciphering the symbols and piecing together the stories embedded in the artifacts. The connection between them grew stronger, bound by a shared purpose and a deep respect for the legacy they were uncovering. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware of the momentous events unfolding within the young man's apartment. The artifacts and the stories they contained were keys to understanding a profound truth about humanity and its place in the universe. The young man stared at the artifacts laid out before him on the table, the room filled with the soft light of early morning. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, piecing together the stories and symbols that had been unveiled. The pendant in particular seemed to call to him, its intricate design pulsating with a quiet, ancient energy. He knew that this was not just a discovery, but a beginning a step into a deeper mystery that stretched back to the origins of his own existence. The woman who had brought him the artifacts watched him with a mixture of hope and concern. She had shared the legacy of her family, their role as guardians of knowledge, and now she was waiting for him to take the next step. Her presence was a constant reminder of the responsibility he now bore. "I've looked into the texts," she said, breaking the silence. "There's a passage that may provide more insight. It speaks of a hidden chamber, a place where the primordial beings once convened. It's said to be a repository of their most sacred knowledge." Her words drew the young man's attention. The idea of a hidden chamber, a repository of ancient knowledge, resonated with him. It was as if the universe was nudging him toward this discovery, urging him to uncover secrets that had been shrouded in obscurity for millennia. "We need to find this place," he said firmly. "It may hold the answers we're looking for." The woman nodded, her expression serious. "I agree, but locating it will be challenging. The texts are vague and the chamber is hidden, protected by layers of secrecy and enchantments." He took a deep breath, considering the weight of their task. The chamber, if it existed, would be a beacon of ancient wisdom and potentially the key to understanding the true nature of the primordial beings and their connection to Earth. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with obstacles, but the young man felt a profound sense of purpose driving him. Together, they began preparing for their search. The young man's apartment, once a quiet sanctuary of study, now buzzed with activity. Maps were spread out, ancient texts were consulted, and strategies were discussed. The search for the hidden chamber became a consuming focus, overshadowing the ordinary routines of daily life. Weeks passed, marked by intense research and rigorous preparation. The woman and the young man developed a plan to follow the clues left in the texts, each step bringing them closer to the elusive chamber. They traveled to remote locations, delving into forgotten archives and consulting with experts who had knowledge of ancient civilizations. The search was exhausting, both physically and mentally, but their determination never wavered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, the young man received a breakthrough. He had been poring over a particularly obscure text when he discovered a reference to a location that matched the descriptions in the ancient writings. The coordinates pointed to a remote mountain range, known for its treacherous terrain and isolation. Excitement mingled with apprehension as they prepared for the journey to the mountain range. The young man and the woman knew that this could be the key to unlocking the secrets they sought. But the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. They packed their supplies and set out, their determination guiding them through the challenges that lay ahead. The journey to the mountain range was arduous. The terrain was rugged, the weather unpredictable, and the isolation of the area seemed to amplify the sense of foreboding. Each step brought them closer to their destination, but also deeper into the unknown. As they climbed higher, the landscape grew more barren and stark, a reflection of the challenges they faced. After days of travel, they reached the base of a mountain that matched the descriptions in the texts. The entrance to the hidden chamber was said to be concealed within this mountain, and finding it would require both ingenuity and perseverance. As they began their search, the young man felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The mountain loomed before them, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the primordial beings. With each passing hour, their search grew more desperate. The entrance to the chamber was elusive, hidden behind layers of natural formations and potentially magical barriers. The young man and the woman worked tirelessly, their efforts fueled by the knowledge that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental. The entrance to the hidden chamber was a silent enigma, partially revealed after hours of relentless searching. The ancient symbols etched into the entrance seemed to pulse with a quiet, enigmatic energy, hinting at the power and mystery concealed within. The young man and the woman stood before it, their breaths visible in the cool mountain air, their exhaustion evident but overshadowed by the anticipation that coursed through them. The young man's gaze traced the inscriptions, trying to decipher their meaning. The symbols, though weathered by time, seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of their torches. Each symbol appeared to tell a part of an ancient story, a fragment of knowledge that had been guarded for millennia. His fingers hovered over the markings, feeling the subtle warmth emanating from them, as if the chamber itself was alive, aware of their presence. The woman stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of determination and curiosity. "This must be it," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of their shared journey. "The chamber we've been searching for, but how do we gain entry?" The young man took a deep breath, his mind racing through the knowledge they had gathered. The text mentioned a specific sequence to unlock the entrance. It involves aligning these symbols in a particular order. We'll need to be precise. He reached into his bag and retrieved a worn notebook, filled with notes and sketches from their research. He compared the symbols on the entrance with those in the notebook, meticulously aligning them according to the instructions they had deciphered. His hands moved with careful precision, guided by the belief that they were on the verge of a groundbreaking discovery. As the final symbol fell into place, a low rumble echoed through the mountain. The ground trembled slightly, and a hidden mechanism within the entrance began to shift. The woman gasped, her eyes wide with awe, as the entrance slowly began to open, revealing a dark passageway beyond. The young man's heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "We did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The chamber is within reach." They exchanged a determined glance and stepped through the entrance, their torches casting long shadows on the walls as they descended into the darkness. The air grew cooler and more still, carrying the faint scent of earth and ancient stone. The passageway was narrow, and the walls were lined with more symbols, their meanings lost to time but clearly significant. The journey through the passageway was slow and careful. The young man and the woman navigated the winding tunnels, their steps echoing in the confined space. Every now and then, they encountered additional inscriptions, some of which seemed to be warnings or protective spells. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of history, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the chamber. Finally, the passage opened into a vast, subterranean hall. The chamber was expansive, its ceiling lost in darkness, but the walls were illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow. The young man and the woman stood at the entrance, taking in the sight before them. The chamber was filled with ancient artifacts, scrolls, and objects that seemed to pulse with a quiet, otherworldly energy. The young man's eyes were drawn to a large, central pedestal on which rested a beautifully crafted, intricate box. It seemed to be the focal point of the chamber, surrounded by a circle of runes that shimmered faintly. The box exuded a palpable sense of power, and the young man felt a profound connection to it, as if it held the answers to questions he had yet to fully understand. "This is it," the young man said, his voice filled with awe. "This is the repository of their sacred knowledge." The woman nodded, her expression a mix of reverence and apprehension. "We need to approach with caution. The chamber was protected for a reason." They moved toward the pedestal, their footsteps reverberating softly through the chamber. As they approached the box, the air seemed to thrum with an ancient energy, and the symbols on the pedestal glowed more intensely. The young man reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and carefully opened the box. Inside, they found an assortment of scrolls and artifacts, each inscribed with symbols and writings that appeared to be of immense importance. The young man carefully lifted one of the scrolls, unrolling it with reverent hands. The text was in a language he recognized from his studies, but the complexity of the script made it clear that this was no ordinary document. As he began to decipher the text, a sense of profound discovery enveloped him. The scroll spoke of the primordial beings' origins, their role in the creation of life, and their connection to Earth. The chamber was a profound silence, broken only by the soft rustle of ancient scrolls as the young man unrolled them. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows across the walls, dancing around the artifacts and adding to the air of reverent secrecy. The woman stood close by, her gaze fixed on the young man as he carefully examined the scrolls. The air was dense with anticipation. Each scroll was a piece of a larger puzzle, fragments of an ancient narrative that had been hidden for centuries. The young man's fingers traced the intricate symbols, his brow furrowed in concentration. The more he deciphered, the clearer it became that the knowledge contained here was not just historical. It was foundational to the understanding of the primordial beings and their connection to Earth. "This one," he said, pointing to a particular scroll, "it speaks of a convergence, a critical event where different threads of existence meet. It seems to describe a time when the primordial beings intersected with Earth." The woman's eyes widened. "That sounds significant. Could it be related to what we've been searching for?" He nodded, carefully unrolling the scroll further. "It could be. But the language is complex, and the meanings are layered. We'll need to piece together these fragments to understand the full context." As they continued their examination, a chilling thought crossed the young man's mind. The primordial beings were said to have existed before time itself, before the concept of laws and order. If this convergence was as pivotal as the text suggested, it could explain why Earth had always been a place of such deep mystery and intrigue. The woman moved closer, her eyes scanning the ancient writings. "There's something else," she said quietly, her voice tinged with apprehension. "The texts mention a guardian, a figure who safeguards the knowledge of the convergence. It's said that this guardian has the power to alter the course of events, but only if the knowledge is used wisely." The young man's heart quickened. The idea of a guardian, a being with the ability to influence significant events, was both intriguing and unsettling. It added another layer to their quest, suggesting that their search for answers was part of a much larger and more intricate design. "This guardian," he mused, "could they be tied to the primordial beings we've been learning about? Or could they be something or someone else entirely?" The woman shook her head, her expression one of uncertainty. "The texts are not clear. They speak of the guardian in reverent tones but offer few specifics." With renewed determination, the young man and the woman continued their work, examining each scroll with meticulous care. Hours passed, and the chamber seemed to stretch into infinity as they delved deeper into the ancient knowledge. They were determined to uncover every detail, understanding that each piece of information could be vital to their quest. Eventually, the young man stumbled upon a fragment that stood out. It was a description of a ritual, a ceremony that was performed at the site of the convergence. The scroll depicted a series of symbols and actions that seemed to be connected to unlocking the full potential of the primordial knowledge. "This could be the key," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "If we can locate the site of the convergence and perform this ritual, we might be able to access the Guardian's wisdom." The woman's eyes met his, reflecting both hope and caution. "It's a risk, but it's our best lead. We need to find this site and prepare for the ritual." As they gathered their findings and prepared to leave the chamber, the weight of their discovery settled heavily on their shoulders. They were on the brink of unlocking ancient truths, but the journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty and danger. The chamber, once a beacon of hidden knowledge, now seemed to loom with the promise of profound revelations and potential peril. The young man and the woman emerged from the hidden chamber, their steps echoing in the cold, still air of the mountainside. The descent was steep and treacherous, each step a reminder of the physical and emotional weight they carried. The night had fallen, wrapping the landscape in a blanket of darkness that seemed to press down upon them. As they reached the base of the mountain, the young man glanced at the woman. Her face was illuminated by the soft glow of the moon, revealing a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We need to rest," he said, his voice steady despite the fatigue that tugged at him. "Tomorrow, we begin the search for the site of the convergence." The woman nodded, her gaze shifting to the dark silhouette of the mountain behind them. "We've made significant progress, but the path ahead is uncertain. We need to approach this with caution." They set up a modest camp near a stream that cut through the rugged terrain. The sound of flowing water was a soothing contrast to the intense silence of the mountain. As they prepared their meal, the young man could not shake the feeling that their journey had taken on a new dimension. The fragments of knowledge they had uncovered were more than just historical, they seemed to hold a deeper significance, one that could alter their understanding of the world and their place in it. Their conversation was minimal as they ate, both lost in their thoughts. The woman's occasional glances towards the dark expanse of the mountain suggested that her mind was also preoccupied with the enormity of their task. Once the meal was finished, they settled down for the night. The young man lay awake, staring up at the stars. The vastness of the sky felt both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The stars seemed to whisper ancient secrets, their light piercing through the darkness in a way that made him feel both insignificant and connected to something greater. In the early hours of dawn, they resumed their journey. The sun's first light revealed the rugged beauty of the landscape. The terrain was challenging, but the young man and the woman were driven by the knowledge they had gained. They followed the coordinates from the scrolls, moving through dense forests and across rocky outcrops. Their path led them to a secluded valley, overgrown with thick vegetation. The young man consulted the map and compared it with the descriptions from the texts. The valley seemed to match the descriptions of the convergence site. They began their search, carefully examining the area for any signs of the ancient ritual site. Hours passed as they combed through the valley. The dense foliage and uneven ground made their progress slow. As they worked, the young man felt a growing sense of urgency. The knowledge they sought was close, and he could almost feel the weight of the history that lay hidden within the earth. Eventually, the woman called out to him. She had uncovered a series of weathered stones partially buried in the ground. They were inscribed with symbols that matched those on the scrolls. "These must be part of the ritual site," she said, her voice filled with excitement. The young man approached, his heart racing as he examined the stones. They formed a rough circle, and within it was a central stone with intricate carvings. It was clear that this was an important location, possibly the site where the convergence rituals had been performed. "We need to uncover the entire site," he said, his voice steady with determination. "This could be the key to accessing the Guardian's wisdom." As they began to clear the overgrowth and reveal more of the site, the young man felt a sense of connection to the past. The stones, though weathered and worn, seemed to hum with a faint energy, as if they were resonating with the echoes of ancient rituals. The day passed in a flurry of activity. The young man and the woman worked tirelessly, revealing more of the ritual site and documenting their findings. As dusk approached, they paused to take a break, their exhaustion evident, but their spirits high. "It's incredible," the woman said, her voice filled with awe. "We're standing where ancient beings once performed their rituals. It feels like we're touching a piece of history that has been hidden for eons." The young man nodded, his eyes scanning the site. "We've come far, but there's still much to uncover. The ritual described in the scrolls could hold the key to understanding the Guardian and the Convergence." As night fell, they set up camp near the ritual site, their minds buzzing with anticipation. The site, bathed in the soft light of the campfire, took on an even more mystical quality. The young man could feel the weight of the history surrounding them, and he knew that the next steps in their quest would be crucial. The first light of dawn painted the valley in hues of gold and amber, illuminating the ancient stones that marked the ritual site. The young man and the woman, their faces etched with determination and fatigue, began their work as soon as the sun's rays breached the horizon. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, mixing with the aroma of their campfire remnants. Their task was clear: decipher the intricate symbols and prepare the site for the ritual described in the ancient scrolls. The stones, though weathered, seemed to whisper secrets from their deep-set grooves. The young man carefully brushed away the last of the overgrowth, revealing more of the central stone's carvings. The symbols were a complex web of interlocking lines and shapes, their meanings obscured by time, but hinting at a deeper significance. The woman, seated cross-legged beside the central stone, meticulously copied the symbols into her notebook. Her brow was furrowed in concentration as she compared the markings with those described in the scrolls. "These patterns," she said, her voice low. "They match the descriptions, but there's something missing. The scrolls talked about a sequence, a process for the ritual. We need to find that order." The young man nodded, his gaze shifting from the symbols to the surrounding landscape. The stones were arranged in a rough circle, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their placement was more than just random. He traced the lines of one of the stones with his finger, trying to piece together their connection to the scrolls. "There must be a key to interpreting this sequence. We need to find that key if we're going to proceed." As they worked, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the site. The silence of the valley was punctuated only by the sounds of their movements and the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. The intensity of their focus was palpable, each small discovery adding to the growing puzzle. By midday, they had uncovered a significant portion of the site. The woman, her hands stained with soil, looked up with a mixture of frustration and excitement. The scrolls mentioned that the ritual involves aligning the symbols with celestial events. "Maybe we're missing a connection to the sky, something that ties these symbols to a specific time or alignment." The young man considered this, his mind racing through the details they had learned. "We should check the alignment of the stones with the sun's path. If the ritual is tied to celestial events, then the position of the stones might reveal something about the timing." They positioned themselves around the central stone, carefully measuring its alignment with the sun's movement. As they worked, the young man felt a growing sense of anticipation. The symbols, the arrangement of the stones, and the celestial alignment all seemed to converge into a singular point of significance. As the sun approached its zenith, a breakthrough occurred. The woman, squinting at the symbols in the sunlight, exclaimed, "Look at this! The central stone's carvings align perfectly with the sun's position. It's as if the stone is meant to capture the sunlight and reflect it according to the symbols." The young man's eyes widened as he observed the play of light across the carvings. If that's the case, then the ritual must involve a precise moment when the sun aligns with the stone. We need to determine the exact timing and perform the ritual during that alignment. Their task was now twofold: calculate the exact time of the alignment and prepare the ritual components. The woman pulled out a detailed astronomical chart, cross-referencing it with their findings. The young man began arranging the stones according to the patterns they had uncovered, ensuring everything was in place for the critical moment. As they worked, the sky shifted, casting a warm, golden glow over the site. The valley, once shrouded in mystery, now felt like a stage set for an ancient performance. The young man and the woman were mere actors in a timeless play, their actions guided by the whispers of the past. Hours passed in meticulous preparation. As the sun approached the precise alignment time, both were acutely aware of the significance of their efforts. The moment was near, and the weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air. They could feel the ritual's power, a silent force that had been waiting for this precise alignment. When the time came, the young man and the woman stood at the center of the ritual site, the sun's light streaming through the gaps in the stone circle. They began the ritual, their movements synchronized with a celestial alignment. The symbols on the stones seemed to glow with an inner light, resonating with the energy of the sun. The ritual was performed with a reverence that matched the ancient ceremonies that had once taken place here. The young man and the woman worked in harmony, their actions guided by the ancient wisdom inscribed in the stones. As they completed the final gestures, a profound stillness enveloped the site. In the quiet that followed, the young man and the woman felt a shift in the air. The ancient power of the site seemed to awaken, a subtle hum that resonated with their very souls. The ritual was complete, and the guardian's wisdom was now within their grasp. The first light of dawn bathed the ritual site in a soft, ethereal glow, casting long shadows that danced around the ancient stones. The young man and the woman, exhausted but driven, stood in the center of the site, their senses attuned to the subtle changes in the environment. The ritual's completion had left a lingering sense of anticipation in the air, a silent promise that the answers they sought were within reach. The woman, her face illuminated by the early light, turned to the young man. "The ritual is done. But what now? We've unleashed something ancient. We need to understand its significance." The young man nodded, his eyes scanning the site for any sign of the guardian's presence. The stones, now glowing faintly with the energy of the sun, seemed to hum with a quiet resonance. "We should be on the lookout for any changes or signals. The guardian's wisdom might not be immediately apparent." They began to explore the area, moving with careful deliberation. The young man's thoughts were consumed by the enormity of their task. The ritual had indeed awakened something, but its true nature remained a mystery. He felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, the weight of their discovery pressing down on him. As they examined the site, the woman noticed a subtle shift in the light. The beams of the sun, now higher in the sky, cast intricate patterns through the gaps between the stones. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the play of light on the central stone. "It's as if the symbols are coming to life." The young man approached, his heart racing as he observed the shifting patterns. The light seemed to trace out the symbols in a sequence that matched the one described in the scrolls. "This could be a sign," he said, his voice filled with awe. "The guardian's wisdom might be encoded in these patterns." They followed the patterns of light, which led them to a section of the site they had not yet fully explored. The young man and the woman worked together to clear away the remaining debris, revealing a hidden chamber beneath the stones. The chamber's entrance was partially obscured, but the symbols they had uncovered seemed to form a key to unlocking it. With careful precision, they activated the mechanisms hidden within the stones, and the entrance to the chamber slowly creaked open. The darkness within contrasted sharply with the bright daylight outside, and the air that wafted from the chamber was cool and filled with a faint, earthy scent. The young man and the woman exchanged a glance, their determination unwavering despite the unknown that lay ahead. "This could be it," the young man said, his voice tinged with both excitement and apprehension. "Let's see what's inside." They descended into the chamber, their steps echoing softly in the confined space. The flickering light from their torches revealed walls adorned with more symbols, their meanings elusive but intriguing. The chamber was filled with ancient artifacts, each meticulously arranged, as if they had been waiting for centuries to be discovered. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested an intricately carved box. The young man approached the pedestal, his heart pounding with anticipation. This box, it might contain the key to understanding the Guardian's wisdom. The woman joined him, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the box. Together, they carefully opened it, revealing a collection of scrolls and an ancient tome bound in worn leather. The scrolls were covered in the same symbols they had seen earlier, but the tome was adorned with a single, prominent sigil. The young man carefully lifted the tome from the box, his fingers brushing against the embossed sigil. This symbol, it's not in the scrolls we've studied. It might be a direct link to the Guardian. The woman examined the scrolls, her eyes widening as she noticed a familiar pattern. These scrolls seemed to be instructions. They might explain how to access the Guardian's wisdom fully. They spent hours poring over the contents of the tome and scrolls, their excitement growing as they deciphered the ancient texts. The tome revealed a series of steps that needed to be followed, a ritual that would unlock the full potential of the Guardian's wisdom. It was clear that their journey was far from over, but the knowledge they had gained was invaluable. As dusk approached, the young man and the woman took a moment to reflect on their progress. The chamber, though filled with the relics of an ancient civilization, felt alive with a sense of purpose. The answers they sought were within reach, but the path ahead would require careful preparation and understanding. The woman, her face illuminated by the flickering light of their torches, turned to the young man. "We've uncovered the Guardian's wisdom, but there's still much to learn. We need to prepare ourselves for the next phase of our journey." The young man nodded, his gaze fixed on the tome. "We have the knowledge, but the true test lies in how we use it. The Guardian's wisdom is a powerful tool, and we must approach it with the respect and caution it deserves." The night descended swiftly upon the valley, wrapping the ritual site and the hidden chamber in a shroud of darkness. The flickering light of the campfire cast dancing shadows on the walls of the chamber, amplifying the sense of mystery that had enveloped the young man and the woman. The weight of their recent discovery lay heavy upon their shoulders, its implications both thrilling and daunting. The woman sat on a stone slab, her gaze fixed on the tome that lay open before her. The ancient text had revealed critical information about the Guardian's wisdom, but it was complex and enigmatic. Her fingers traced the symbols on the page, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. This is more than just a guide," she murmured, her voice a whisper lost in the silence of the chamber. "It's a map, a guide to something profound, something that could change everything." The young man paced nearby, his expression a mix of anxiety and determination. "If this map leads to something of such importance, then we need to be prepared. We're treading on ancient ground that was meant to be forgotten. There's bound to be danger." He paused and looked at her, his voice laden with a quiet intensity. "We've come this far, but we're still missing a crucial piece." The tome spoke of trials, challenges that test the heart and spirit. What if we're not ready for what lies ahead? The woman met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resolve. "We've already faced so much. We've uncovered the Guardian's wisdom. Now, we must prove ourselves worthy of it. We can't back down now." The conversation hung heavy in the air, charged with the unspoken fear of the unknown and the unrelenting drive to push forward. The young man felt a pang of doubt, but pushed it aside. The woman's strength was a beacon of hope, guiding him through the murky waters of uncertainty. As they prepared to delve deeper into the chamber's secrets, the young man's mind wandered to the sacrifices they had made and the personal stakes involved. His thoughts drifted to loved ones left behind, the life he had once known, and the stark contrast to the ancient world he now inhabited. The weight of these reflections pressed on him, a reminder of the personal cost of their quest. The woman, sensing his turmoil, reached out and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We're not alone in this. Whatever happens next, we face it together. We've come too far to let fear dictate our path." Her touch was a lifeline, a tangible reminder of their shared purpose and the strength they drew from each other. The young man looked at her, his resolve hardening. "You're right. We have to see this through. If there are trials ahead, we'll face them with everything we have." The chamber seemed to respond to their renewed determination. The symbols on the walls began to shimmer with a faint light, as if acknowledging their commitment. The young man and the woman gathered their gear and prepared to follow the map's instructions, their movements filled with a sense of purpose. As they navigated the chamber's labyrinthine passages, the air grew colder and the silence more profound. The sense of being watched was palpable, heightening their senses and sharpening their focus. They encountered a series of challenges, mechanical traps, riddles inscribed in ancient languages, and puzzles that tested their wits and courage. Each obstacle they overcame brought them closer to understanding the Guardian's wisdom, but it also intensified their emotional strain. The young man grappled with the weight of responsibility, while the woman wrestled with the fear of failure and the loss of their previous life. Their bond was tested as never before, their conversations deepening with the weight of their experiences. At one point, they reached a vast chamber adorned with a massive stone door. The door was intricately carved with scenes of ancient battles and celestial events, the craftsmanship awe-inspiring and intimidating. The tome indicated that this was the final barrier before they could access the core of the Guardian's wisdom. The young man approached the door, his heart pounding as he studied the carvings. "This is it. The final test. We need to decipher these images and unlock the door." The woman joined him, her face pale but determined. The tome mentioned a ritual of acknowledgement. "We need to perform it to gain entry." They began the ritual, their voices echoing in the chamber as they recited the ancient incantations. The process was intricate, requiring precise movements and utterances. As they performed the ritual, the door began to glow with a soft, golden light, the carvings shifting and realigning. When the door finally creaked open, revealing the chamber beyond, the young man and the woman stood at the threshold, their emotions a turbulent mix of hope and trepidation. The room was bathed in a soft, otherworldly glow, its contents shrouded in mystery. The young man turned to the woman, his voice low and filled with awe. "We've done it. We've reached the heart of the Guardian's wisdom." The woman nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. Whatever we find here, we must be ready. Our journey is far from over." As they stepped into the chamber, the enormity of their quest became apparent. The room was filled with relics and artifacts of immense significance, each holding the potential to alter their understanding of the Guardian's wisdom. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with both discovery and danger, but they were prepared to face it with courage and determination. The young man and the woman, standing on the threshold of their greatest challenge, yet took a deep breath and stepped into the unknown, ready to confront the trials and revelations that awaited them. The chamber's glow intensified as the young man and the woman stepped inside, the light revealing walls lined with ancient texts and artifacts. The air was thick with a palpable energy, a reverent silence that seemed to whisper of the secrets held within these walls. The room was circular, its center dominated by a raised pedestal on which rested a magnificent artifact, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The young man's breath caught as he approached the pedestal. The artifact was a crystalline orb, encased in an elaborate metal framework adorned with celestial motifs. It radiated a soft, golden light that filled the room, casting long, intricate shadows on the walls. The orb seemed to hum, a faint vibration that resonated with the very core of his being. The woman, her gaze fixed on the orb, approached cautiously. "This must be the source of the Guardian's wisdom," she said, her voice reverent. "It's beautiful, but there's something almost unsettling about it." The young man nodded, his eyes never leaving the orb. "We need to understand its purpose and how to access its knowledge. The tome should have more information." They carefully retrieved the tome from their packs, the weight of its ancient pages a tangible reminder of the journey they had undertaken. As they unfurled the pages, they discovered detailed instructions for interacting with the orb, including a series of ritualistic gestures and incantations. The woman took a deep breath and began to read aloud, her voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air. "The orb is said to reveal the Guardian's wisdom to those who approach it with purity of heart and unwavering intent. The ritual requires both physical and mental focus. The young man took his place beside her, his movements precise as he followed the instructions. They began the ritual, their actions synchronized with the descriptions in the tome. As they completed the series of gestures and spoken words, the orb's glow intensified, and the room was filled with a resonant hum that seemed to echo through the chamber. Suddenly, the orb's light flared, and a vision emerged from its surface, a swirling vortex of colors and shapes that seemed to defy the boundaries of space and time. The young man and the woman watched in awe as the vision unfolded before them, revealing scenes of ancient battles, celestial events, and enigmatic symbols. The vision coalesced into a single image, a vast, star-filled expanse with a central point of light. The light grew brighter, taking on the form of a majestic figure, an embodiment of wisdom and power. The figure spoke, its voice resonating with a profound depth that seemed to penetrate their very souls. "Welcome, seekers of truth. You have demonstrated courage and resolve in your journey. The wisdom you seek is not merely knowledge, but understanding, a glimpse into the essence of the Guardian's legacy." The young man and the woman exchanged glances, their emotions a turbulent mix of awe, fear, and determination. The figure continued, its voice imbued with a sense of timelessness. "To access the full extent of the Guardian's wisdom, you must confront the trials of the heart and spirit. These trials will test your deepest fears and desires, revealing the true nature of your quest. Only by overcoming them can you unlock the path to the ultimate knowledge." The vision began to fade, the image of the figure dissolving into the swirling vortex of colors. The orb's glow dimmed, leaving the chamber in a profound silence. The young man and the woman stood in the aftermath, their minds reeling from the experience. "What does this mean?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. "Trials of the heart and spirit. How are we supposed to confront those?" The young man took a deep breath, his mind racing with the implications of the vision. "It means we have more challenges ahead, challenges that will test us in ways we can't yet imagine. We need to prepare ourselves, both mentally and emotionally. This is about more than just uncovering knowledge. It's about understanding ourselves and our place in this journey." They took a moment to collect their thoughts and emotions, the weight of their task settling heavily upon them. The vision had revealed the depth of their quest and the personal stakes involved, and they knew that the path ahead would be fraught with difficulty. The young man and the woman began to explore the chamber further, searching for any clues or artifacts that might assist them in the trials to come. Their search led them to a series of inscriptions on the walls, detailing various aspects of the Guardian's legacy and the nature of the trials. As they studied the inscriptions, the young man's thoughts turned to their past struggles and triumphs. He thought of the sacrifices they had made and the people they had left behind. The weight of their journey was a constant presence, a reminder of the personal cost of their quest. The woman, too, was deep in thought, her mind occupied with the emotional and psychological challenges they would face. She reflected on their bond and the strength they drew from each other, knowing that their relationship would be tested as never before. Together, they gathered their findings and prepared to face the trials of the heart and spirit. The chamber, once a place of awe and wonder, had become a crucible of their determination and resilience. They were ready to confront the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge they had gained and the resolve to see their quest through to its end. As they left the chamber, the young man and the woman carried with them the weight of their newfound understanding and the promise of the trials to come. Their journey was far from over, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but they faced it with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to confront the trials of the heart and spirit with courage and determination. The chamber's glow faded behind them as they stepped into the darkness, the echoes of the Guardian's wisdom guiding them toward the next phase of their journey. The trials awaited, and with them, the promise of revelation and understanding. The tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, its walls etched with ancient runes that pulsed faintly with an eerie light. The young man and the woman walked side by side, the weight of the chamber's revelation pressing heavily on their shoulders. Each step echoed in the confined space, a rhythmic reminder of the trials that lay ahead. They emerged into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center stood an imposing archway, adorned with intricate carvings that depicted scenes of both triumph and despair. The archway was flanked by two statues, their stone eyes seemingly watching the newcomers with a silent, inscrutable gaze. As they approached, a deep rumble reverberated through the cavern, and the archway's surface shimmered, revealing a passage leading into the heart of the mountain. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, mingling with the anticipation of what lay beyond. The woman glanced at the young man, her face a mask of determination and apprehension. "This is it, the trials of the heart and spirit." The young man nodded, his expression set in resolute focus. "We need to be prepared for anything. These trials will test us in ways we haven't anticipated." They stepped through the archway, entering a dimly lit chamber that seemed to shift and change with each passing moment. The walls were adorned with shifting shadows and flickering lights, creating an atmosphere of disorientation and unease. In the center of the room stood a series of mirrors, each reflecting different aspects of themselves, some familiar, others distorted and unfamiliar. The mirrors seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, their surfaces rippling like disturbed water. The young man approached one of the mirrors, his reflection morphing into a grotesque caricature of himself. He saw the embodiment of his deepest fears and insecurities, his image twisted into a dark, menacing figure. The woman stood beside him, her reflection shifting to show scenes of personal loss and failure. The mirror depicted her most painful memories, each one more vivid and tormenting than the last. "This is a test," she said, her voice trembling. "We have to face our deepest fears." The young man took a deep breath, forcing himself to confront the image before him. He saw not just his fears, but the moments of doubt and hesitation that had plagued him throughout their journey. Each distorted reflection was a manifestation of his inner turmoil. The woman's gaze was fixed on her own reflection, her eyes brimming with tears. She saw the faces of those she had lost, the weight of their absence a constant reminder of her own vulnerabilities. Together, they faced their reflections, each one a symbol of their inner struggles. The chamber seemed to close in on them, the oppressive atmosphere intensifying as they fought to maintain their composure. The young man reached out to touch the mirror's surface, his fingers meeting the cold, unyielding glass. As he did, the distorted reflection began to shift, the grotesque figure gradually taking on a more familiar and human form. The mirror's surface cleared, revealing his true self flawed but determined. The woman followed suit, her own reflection gradually returning to a more recognizable form. The painful memories receded, replaced by a sense of acceptance and resolve. With their reflections returned to their true forms, the chamber's oppressive atmosphere began to lift. The mirror's surfaces cleared, revealing a new passage leading further into the mountain. The young man and the woman exchanged a glance, their faces marked by a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We've faced our fears," the young man said, his voice steady. "Now we move forward." They continued through the passage, the trials of the heart behind them. The path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but their resolve had been tested and affirmed. They had confronted their deepest fears and emerged stronger for it. The new passage led them to a small, dimly lit room filled with ancient tomes and artifacts. At its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single scroll. The scroll was bound in intricate gold filigree, its surface adorned with symbols that matched those they had seen earlier. The young man and the woman approached the pedestal, their previous trials giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. The scroll was a tangible link to the Guardian's wisdom, a key to unlocking the next stage of their journey. As they unrolled the scroll, a sense of anticipation filled the room. The text was written in an ancient script, its meaning partially obscured by the passage of time. The young man carefully deciphered the symbols, revealing instructions for the next phase of their quest. "This scroll details the trials of the spirit," he said, his eyes scanning the text. "It looks like we'll need to confront not just our fears, but the very essence of who we are." The woman nodded, her expression one of determination. "We've faced our fears. Now we need to understand ourselves." The chamber's glow enveloped the young man and the woman as they descended into its depths, their footsteps echoing in the vast, circular space. The room, bathed in an eerie, golden light from the orb they had encountered earlier, felt both ancient and alive. The walls, covered in intricate symbols and faded murals, pulsed with an unspoken energy. At the center of the chamber stood a large, reflective pool. Its surface was still, like a dark mirror, and its edges were lined with delicate, glowing flowers whose light cast shifting patterns across the floor. The air was thick with a sense of waiting, as though the chamber itself held its breath, anticipating their next move. The woman's gaze was fixed on the pool, a mix of awe and apprehension in her eyes. "This pool, it feels like it's watching us. Do you sense it too?" The young man nodded, his own unease mirrored in his expression. "It's as if it knows our deepest fears and desires. We need to approach it carefully." They stepped closer to the pool, their reflections merging with a dark surface. The moment they did, the pool's waters began to ripple, and their reflections morphed into shifting images of their past, their fears, and their desires. The young man's reflection showed him alone, surrounded by shadows of lost friends and failures. His heart tightened as he saw himself at a pivotal moment of his past, a choice that had haunted him. The shadows whispered accusations, and the weight of his unresolved guilt threatened to overwhelm him. He clenched his fists, trying to ignore the painful memories. Beside him, the woman faced her own reflection, a vision of her childhood fears, interspersed with moments of loss and regret. The image of a loved one, lost and unreachable, filled her with a deep sorrow. Her eyes welled up as she confronted the emotional wounds she had buried for years. As they stood there, struggling with their reflections, a new challenge emerged from the pool's depths. The golden flowers around the pool began to glow brighter, their light intensifying into beams that converged on a single point in the pool's center. The young man and the woman watched in a mix of fear and fascination, as the light formed a path leading to a small, floating pedestal. On the pedestal rested a delicate, golden flower, its petals radiating a gentle, calming light. The flower seemed to beckon them, offering a sense of peace amid the turmoil. But as they approached, the pool's surface began to churn again, reflecting their inner turmoil. "Look at that," the woman said, her voice trembling. "It's as if the flower is inviting us to find calm amid the chaos." The young man reached out to grasp the flower, his hand shaking slightly. As he did, the tumultuous reflections in the pool began to recede, and the shadows and light coalesced into a clearer, more serene image. He felt a wave of understanding wash over him, as if the flower was guiding him to confront and accept his past. The woman joined him, her touch light but determined. As they held the flower together, a wave of tranquility enveloped them. The golden light from the flower spread throughout the chamber, soothing their fears and sorrows. They felt a profound sense of clarity and unity, as though they had faced and overcome a significant part of their emotional journey. With the trial of the spirit complete, the young man and the woman took a moment to collect themselves. Their shared experience had deepened their bond, and the challenges they had faced had strengthened their resolve. "This trial," the woman said softly, "was about confronting our deepest fears and finding peace within ourselves. We've learned more about each other and ourselves than I thought possible." The young man nodded, his gaze fixed on the now calm surface of the pool. "We've gained insight, but there's more to come. The path ahead is still fraught with challenges, and we need to stay focused." As they prepared to leave the chamber, they noticed a new passageway had opened up, illuminated by the soft glow of the flower's light. The air in the passageway felt charged with potential, a new path leading them forward. The young man and the woman exchanged a determined glance, their spirits bolstered by their recent trials. They moved toward the passageway, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The trials of the spirit had given them the strength to continue, and they stepped forward with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace the next challenge in their quest for understanding. The chamber's golden light faded behind them as they entered the new passage, the echoes of their trials guiding them into the unknown. The journey continued, with the promise of further revelations and trials yet to come. The new passageway was narrow, its walls covered in ancient runes that glowed softly in the dim light. The young man and the woman moved cautiously, their senses attuned to every sound and shadow. The air was cooler here, carrying a subtle scent of earth and forgotten history. The passage seemed to stretch on endlessly, but a sense of purpose propelled them forward. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a cavernous hall, its ceiling lost in shadow and its floor paved with worn, uneven stones. The hall was vast, dominated by a colossal structure at its center, a towering obelisk covered in the same intricate symbols that adorned the passageway. The obelisk pulsed with a rhythmic, faint light, as if it was breathing, echoing the steady thrum of their own heartbeats. At the base of the obelisk was a large, circular altar, surrounded by 4 stone pillars. Each pillar held a different artifact: an ancient tome, a crystal orb, a rusted sword, and a small, unadorned box. The artifacts were positioned in such a way that they seemed to form a protective circle around the obelisk. The woman's eyes were drawn to the tome. Its cover was embossed with faded golden letters, barely legible, but suggesting some form of knowledge or wisdom. The young man's gaze lingered on the crystal orb. Its surface shimmered with an inner light, hinting at secrets held within. "Do you think these artifacts are part of the trial?" the woman asked, her voice echoing slightly in the vast hall. The young man nodded thoughtfully. "They could be. Each seems to represent a different aspect of the journey we've been on: knowledge, insight, strength, and perhaps something else we haven't yet identified." They approached the artifacts, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of their arrangement. The tome seemed to beckon with a promise of forgotten knowledge, while the orb pulsated with a sense of enigmatic power. The sword, though rusted and worn, hinted at battles fought and lessons learned, while the box remained an inscrutable mystery. As they examined the artifacts, a low, resonant hum filled the hall, originating from the obelisk. The symbols on its surface began to shift and rearrange themselves, forming a new pattern that seemed to narrate a story of its own. The air grew warmer, charged with an almost palpable energy. Without warning, the obelisk's light intensified, casting long, dramatic shadows across the hall. The artifacts began to glow in response, their individual lights merging into a spectrum of colors that danced across the walls and floor. The young man and the woman stood side by side, their eyes reflecting the shifting light. The obelisk's illumination highlighted the importance of their next actions. It was clear that the artifacts were more than mere objects. They were keys to understanding the obelisk's message and the trials that lay ahead. "Let's start with the tome," the woman suggested. "Knowledge might provide us with the insight we need to decipher the rest of this trial." The young man agreed, and they approached the tome together. As the woman carefully opened it, the ancient pages revealed a script that appeared both familiar and foreign. The text seemed to pulse with the same rhythmic energy as the obelisk, creating a link between the written words and the symbols around them. The script detailed the history of the obelisk and the trials it had witnessed. It spoke of an ancient civilization that had once thrived here, their wisdom inscribed in the very stone of the obelisk. The trials were designed to test not only physical prowess, but also the understanding of the past and the courage to confront one's own history. As they read, the young man and the woman felt a deeper connection to the journey they were on. The trials were not just tests of strength or will, but of understanding and acceptance of their own pasts and the lessons learned from them. The final passage of the tome spoke of a final trial, one that would require them to integrate all they had learned and faced. It hinted at a hidden chamber, accessible only through the combined knowledge of the artifacts and the acceptance of the journey they had undertaken. With this newfound understanding, the young man and the woman turned their attention to the remaining artifacts. The crystal orb, the rusted sword, and the small box now held a greater significance. Each represented a crucial piece of their quest. The orb symbolized vision and clarity, the sword represented strength and courage, and the box was the ultimate enigma, promising resolution or revelation. They began to explore the artifacts more closely, their movements guided by the knowledge gained from the tome. The crystal orb's light grew brighter as they approached it, and the rusted sword seemed to resonate with a faint hum. The box remained still, but seemed to pulse with an energy that suggested it held the key to their next step. As they worked through the artifacts, the obelisk's light shifted, illuminating the hidden chamber mentioned in the tome. A secret passageway revealed itself, leading further into the depths of the ancient structure. The young man and the woman exchanged determined glances. They had faced their fears and confronted their pasts. Now, they were ready to face the final trial, armed with the wisdom and strength they had gained along the way. They stepped into the newly revealed passageway, their resolve strengthened by the trials they had endured. The journey was far from over, but they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, guided by the knowledge and courage they had discovered. The echoes of the past had led them to this moment, and the promise of further revelations awaited them as they continued their quest. The new passageway was a narrow tunnel, its walls adorned with more of the enigmatic runes that had become a familiar sight. The tunnel's dim light was punctuated by occasional flickers of bioluminescence, casting fleeting shadows that danced along the stone. The air felt heavier here, filled with a tense anticipation that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the steady beat of their hearts. As the young man and the woman advanced, the passageway began to widen. They emerged into a vast, open chamber that dwarfed the previous halls. The room was an awe-inspiring expanse of stone and shadow, illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow emanating from a crystalline structure at its center. The crystal was enormous, its facets catching and refracting light into an intricate play of colors that painted the chamber's walls with an ever-changing tapestry of hues. At the base of the crystal, an elaborate mosaic covered the floor, depicting scenes of an ancient civilization's achievements and struggles. The images were vibrant yet faded, suggesting a rich history that had endured through the ages. The chamber itself felt alive, imbued with the weight of countless years of history and wisdom. The young man and the woman moved toward the crystal, their steps echoing softly in the vast space. The air was cooler here, and a faint, melodic hum resonated from the crystal, as if it were singing a silent song of the past. The crystal's glow bathed them in its light, casting elongated shadows that seemed to move with them. "What do you think this place is?" the woman asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The young man scanned the chamber, his eyes drawn to the mosaic. "It looks like a record of the civilization that built this place. Maybe it's a final test away to prove our understanding of what we've learned so far." They approached the mosaic, studying the intricate designs and symbols. The scenes depicted various aspects of the civilization's life, from grand achievements to moments of profound struggle. As they examined the images, they began to recognize patterns and themes that connected with the trials they had faced. The mosaic showed depictions of individuals standing before trials similar to those the young man and the woman had encountered. Some were seen confronting fears, others seeking wisdom, and still others battling external forces. It was as if the mosaic was guiding them through the very essence of the trials they had experienced. In the center of the mosaic, an image stood out, a figure standing before the crystal, surrounded by a radiant aura. The figure's posture suggested both humility and strength, as if acknowledging the wisdom imparted by the crystal. The image was accompanied by symbols that seemed to urge a deeper understanding and acceptance. "This seems to be telling us that we need to reflect on our journey and what we've learned," the young man said. "The crystal might hold the key to our final understanding." The woman nodded, her gaze fixed on the crystal. "It's as if the crystal is waiting for us to prove our readiness, to show that we've grasped the lessons of the trials." They approached the crystal, their steps careful and deliberate. As they drew near, the light from the crystal intensified, filling the chamber with a warm, enveloping glow. The melodic hum grew louder, resonating in their chests. The young man extended a hand toward the crystal, his fingers brushing its surface. The moment his skin touched the cool, smooth surface, the crystal's light flared, and the chamber was filled with a cascade of images and sounds. It was as if the very essence of the civilization was being revealed to them. Visions of ancient rituals, teachings, and experiences flashed before their eyes. They saw the struggles and triumphs of those who had come before them, their trials and achievements woven into the fabric of history. The images were vivid and emotional, each one a testament to the resilience and wisdom of the ancient people. In the midst of the visions, a new scene emerged, a figure similar to the one in the mosaic, standing at the heart of the crystal's light. The figure's face was serene, and it seemed to emanate a sense of profound understanding and peace. The image conveyed a message of unity and acceptance, suggesting that the true power of the crystal lay in recognizing and embracing the lessons of the past. As the vision subsided, the light from the crystal began to fade, leaving the young man and the woman in a deeper, more reflective silence. The chamber was still, the only sound the faint echo of their own breathing. "We've learned so much," the woman said softly. "It's clear now that the trials were not just about facing challenges, but about understanding and accepting ourselves and our past." The young man nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The crystal has shown us the culmination of everything we've encountered. It's about embracing the lessons and using them to move forward." They stood together in the fading light, their understanding deepened by the revelations of the chamber. The final trial had been one of integration and acceptance, bringing together the lessons of the past and the wisdom gained from their journey. The passageway beyond the chamber was darker, its walls narrowing as if guiding the young man and the woman toward a single, inevitable destination. The air was thick with tension, each step echoing faintly as they advanced into the unknown. The crystal's wisdom lingered in their minds, a comforting presence amid the growing darkness. As they ventured deeper, the narrow corridor began to widen once more, revealing a new chamber. This one was unlike the others they had encountered. Its walls were shrouded in shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The chamber was dimly lit by an eerie, bluish glow that emanated from a pool of water at its center. The surface of the pool was unnaturally still, reflecting the distorted shapes of the shadows that danced around the room. The woman hesitated at the threshold, her gaze fixed on the shifting shadows. "This place feels different. It's as if the darkness is alive." The young man nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the room. "It's a place of illusions and hidden truths. We have to be careful. What we see might not be real." They stepped into the chamber cautiously, their senses heightened. The shadows seemed to react to their presence, swirling and twisting in response to their movements. The bluish light from the pool cast strange, elongated reflections, distorting the reality around them. As they approached the pool, the shadows began to coalesce into shapes, vague forms that hinted at figures from their pasts. The woman's breath caught as she recognized the face of someone she had lost long ago, the pain of that memory still fresh in her heart. The young man, too, saw familiar faces, reminders of choices made and paths taken. "These are our pasts," the woman whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "They're testing us with our own memories." The young man clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus on the present. "It's another trial, a test of our resolve and our ability to confront what's inside us." The shadows solidified further, becoming clearer with each passing moment. The faces of loved ones, old friends, and adversaries appeared, their expressions frozen in time. The chamber seemed to resonate with the weight of unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The pool of water began to ripple, distorting the reflections on its surface. A voice, soft yet insistent, echoed from the depths of the water, carrying with it a message that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. "Face what you fear. Accept what you have lost. Only then can you move forward." The words hung in the air, challenging them to confront the specters that had emerged from the shadows. The woman stared at the figure before her, a person whose absence had left a void in her heart. The young man's gaze lingered on the reflection of someone he had wronged, the guilt of his actions a constant burden. With a deep breath, the woman stepped closer to the figure, her heart pounding in her chest. "I miss you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish things could have been different." The shadowed figure did not respond, but the expression on its face softened, as if acknowledging her words. The woman closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. She knew that holding on to the past had only kept her trapped, unable to move forward. The crystal had shown her the importance of acceptance, and now she had to apply that lesson here. When she opened her eyes again, the shadowy figure began to fade, dissolving into the surrounding darkness. The weight on her heart lifted slightly, replaced by a bittersweet sense of closure. The young man, too, faced his own shadow. He stared at the reflection of the person he had wronged, the guilt gnawing at him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "I never meant to hurt you." The shadow's expression remained unchanged, but the young man felt a shift within himself. Admitting his guilt and confronting his mistakes allowed him to take the first step toward forgiveness, both from the person he had wronged and from himself. As the shadow faded, the pool of water grew still once more, the bluish glow softening. The chamber's oppressive atmosphere began to lighten, the shadows retreating to the edges of the room. The woman and the young man exchanged a look of understanding. The trial had forced them to confront their deepest fears and regrets, to face the parts of themselves they had tried to bury. It had been painful, but necessary. They had emerged stronger, their bond deepened by the shared experience. The passage ahead was revealed as the last of the shadows receded. It was a narrow, winding path that seemed to descend deeper into the earth. The air was cooler, the darkness more complete, but they were no longer afraid. They had faced the trials of the past, accepted their mistakes and losses, and now they were ready to move forward. The path ahead was uncertain, but they walked it with a newfound confidence, their resolve strengthened by the trials they had overcome. As they descended, the echoes of their past faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of their footsteps. The journey was not yet over, but they knew they were on the right path. The shadows had tested them, and they had emerged victorious, their hearts lighter and their spirits unbroken. The path of shadows had been treacherous, but it had also been illuminating, revealing the truths they had needed to see. And now, with the past behind them, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The descent into the earth grew steeper, the walls around them narrowing once more as if the very ground sought to compress their spirits. The air grew colder, carrying with it an unnatural stillness that seemed to absorb sound, leaving only the muted thud of their footsteps. The young man and the woman pressed forward, the weight of the recent trial still heavy on their minds. As they continued, the narrow path began to widen again, revealing another chamber, this one starkly different from the others they had encountered. The room was vast, its ceilings high and barely visible in the dim light that emanated from a peculiar source at the center, a large, translucent veil suspended in midair, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The light it cast was soft, almost comforting, but the silence that enveloped the room was oppressive, a silence so profound that it felt like a physical presence pressing down on them. The woman approached the veil cautiously, her steps measured and deliberate. "What is this place?" she whispered, though her voice seemed swallowed by the silence before it could reach the young man's ears. He followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing as he studied the veil. It seemed to pulse gently, as if it were a living entity, its surface shifting and undulating like a calm sea under the influence of an unseen force. There was something hypnotic about its movement, something that drew them closer despite the unease that gnawed at their senses. "This is no ordinary veil," the young man murmured, his voice barely more than a breath. "It's as if it's waiting for something for us." The woman reached out, her fingers hovering just inches from the surface of the veil. The closer she got, the more she felt a strange energy emanating from it, a subtle vibration that thrummed in the air. She hesitated, glancing at the young man for reassurance. He nodded, his expression serious. "We've come this far. Whatever this is, we need to face it." With a deep breath, the woman allowed her fingertips to brush against the veil. The moment they made contact, the silence shattered like glass, replaced by a cacophony of sounds, whispers, cries, and indistinct murmurs that filled the chamber. The veil began to ripple violently, its once calming glow intensifying until it became blinding. The young man shielded his eyes, his heart racing. "What's happening?" The woman pulled her hand back, but the connection had already been made. The veil surged with energy, expanding outward and enveloping them both in its luminous embrace. The world around them dissolved into light and sound, a chaotic storm of voices and images that overwhelmed their senses. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the storm ceased. The light faded, the sounds dissipated, and the silence returned this time, deeper and more absolute than before. The young man and the woman found themselves standing in a new place, one that was both familiar and alien. They were no longer in the chamber. Instead, they stood in a vast, empty void, the ground beneath their feet a featureless expanse of white. The horizon stretched endlessly in all directions, devoid of any landmarks or points of reference. It was a place outside of time and space, a liminal realm where the boundaries of reality seemed to blur. The woman turned in a slow circle, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Where are we?" The young man scanned the emptiness around them, searching for any sign of what they were meant to do. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I think this place is connected to the veil somehow. It brought us here for a reason." As if in response to his words, the ground beneath their feet began to ripple, sending out waves that traveled across the wide expanse. The ripples converged in the distance, forming a shape that slowly took on a more defined form, a towering figure, its features obscured by a thick, swirling mist. The figure was immense, dwarfing them both by several stories. It exuded an aura of power and authority, its presence commanding attention. Though its face was hidden, there was an unmistakable sense that it was watching them, studying them. The young man and the woman exchanged a glance, their unease growing. This was no ordinary entity. It was something ancient, something that had existed long before their journey had begun. The figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant, reverberating through the void. "You have passed the trials of the past and the trials of the self. Now, you stand before the final test, the test of purpose." The woman's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" The figure's misty form shifted slightly, its tone becoming more ominous. "The veil is a threshold, a barrier between the known and the unknown, between what is and what could be. To pass beyond it, you must prove that your purpose is true, that your will is unshaken." The young man frowned, his mind racing. "And how do we do that?" The figure's response was immediate, its voice carrying an almost imperceptible edge of challenge. "By confronting your innermost desires and fears, by standing firm in the face of temptation and despair, only then will you be worthy of crossing the veil." As the figure spoke, the mist around it began to thin, revealing glimpses of what lay beyond, a world teeming with possibilities, with paths that diverged in countless directions. The young man and the woman could see fragments of their potential futures, some filled with joy and fulfillment, others with sorrow and loss. The woman's breath caught as she saw a vision of herself standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping through her hair as she stared down into an abyss that seemed to have no end. The young man saw himself standing alone in a vast desert, the sun beating down on him mercilessly as he struggled to find his way. "These are our fears," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "Our fears and our desires." The figure nodded, its gaze never leaving them. "Yes, and you must confront them, here and now. If you falter, if you give in to doubt or despair, the veil will reject you, and you will be cast back into the darkness." The young man and the woman stood in silence, the weight of the challenge pressing down on them. They knew that this was the culmination of their journey, the final test that would determine their fate. To pass beyond the veil, they would need to find the strength within themselves, the courage to face their fears head-on. The woman took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We've come too far to turn back now. Whatever lies ahead, we have to face it together." The young man nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll face it and we'll overcome it." With those words, they stepped forward, their hearts pounding in unison as they prepared to confront the final trial. The mist around the figure began to swirl faster, the visions of their fears and desires growing sharper, more vivid. The ground beneath their feet shifted, becoming unstable, as if testing their resolve. But they did not waver. They knew that the path they had chosen was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they also knew that they could not turn back. They had to face the darkness, to embrace the unknown, and to trust in themselves and in each other. And so, with a shared glance of determination, they stepped into the mist, ready to face whatever lay beyond the veil. The mantra resonates as you move forward. every step more deliberate than the last. This is an HFY story. It is grounded and realistic, a continuation of the journey without pause. Every word, every sentence must carry weight, evoking deep human emotions. The writing must remain down to earth, free from filler, free from vague endings, and must flow seamlessly, ensuring that the reader feels the tension, the fear, and the hope that drives the characters forward. The mist thickened as they advanced, swirling around them in an intricate dance, as if the very air were alive with intent. With each step, the visions grew clearer, more defined, until they were no longer mere glimpses, but full, vivid scenes playing out before their eyes. For the woman, the cliff was no longer just an image, it was real. She could feel the cold, biting wind tearing at her clothes, hear the distant roar of the waves crashing against the rocks far below. The abyss beckoned, a dark, yawning void that seemed to promise both an end and a beginning. Her heart raced, fear clawing at her throat, but she did not stop. This fear, this manifestation of her deepest anxieties, was something she had to face. The young man, too, found himself in his vision, a vast, desolate desert, the heat oppressive, the sun relentless. The sand beneath his feet was scorching, burning through his boots, and the horizon seemed to stretch on endlessly, mocking his efforts to find a way forward. He could feel the weight of loneliness, the despair of being lost with no one to turn to, no guiding star to lead him out of the wasteland. But in this story, grounded and realistic, they both knew that these were not just fears to be endured, they were tests, challenges that demanded a response. There would be no metaphors, no grandiose gestures. This was a confrontation with the self, a battle fought not with swords or spells, but with sheer willpower. The woman took a step closer to the edge of the cliff, her legs trembling but her resolve firm. She had been here before, in her dreams, in her nightmares, but this time was different. This time, she was not alone. She glanced back at the young man, who was struggling through the desert, and knew that they were connected, even in this place of isolation. She would not let the abyss consume her. Not now, not ever. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and let the wind wash over her. The fear was still there, gnawing at her insides, but she faced it head-on. She opened her eyes again, and the cliff seemed less daunting, the abyss less infinite. She took another step forward, and the edge receded, the ground beneath her feet solidifying as she reclaimed her power from the void. In the desert, the young man's struggle was much the same. The heat was unbearable, the thirst almost overwhelming, but he pressed on. The sun beat down on him mercilessly, but he refused to bow to it. He had faced worse in his life, had fought battles more grueling than this. The desert was a symbol of his fears, but it was not stronger than his determination. With every step, the sand beneath him cooled, the air became less suffocating. He pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that the woman was facing her own trial, and that together they could overcome anything. And then, as if sensing their resolve, the visions began to shift. The cliff before the woman faded, replaced by a lush forest, the sunlight filtering through the leaves in a warm, golden glow. The desert around the young man transformed into a vibrant landscape, the parched earth giving way to fields of green, the sky a clear, brilliant blue. The figure in the mist watched them, its form still towering and imposing, but there was a subtle change in its demeanor. The challenge had been met, the fears confronted. The veil no longer felt like an impenetrable barrier, but rather a gateway, an invitation to move forward. The figure's voice echoed through the void once more, resonating with a quiet approval. You have faced your fears and remained true to your purpose. The veil recognizes your strength, your courage. You are worthy to pass beyond it. The mist around the figure began to dissipate, revealing a path leading forward, a bridge between the world they knew and the unknown that lay ahead. The veil, once a pulsating, ominous presence, now seemed almost welcoming, its glow soft and inviting. The woman and the young man stood side by side, the trials behind them, but the journey far from over. They knew that whatever awaited them beyond the veil would not be easy, but they were ready. Together, they had faced their fears, and together, they would face whatever came next. With a final glance at each other, they stepped forward, crossing the threshold and entering a new chapter of their journey. The veil parted before them, revealing a world that was both strange and familiar, a place where the boundaries between reality and possibility blurred. And as they ventured into the unknown, the silence that had once been so oppressive now felt like a companion, a reminder of the trials they had overcome and the strength they had found within themselves. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were no longer afraid. For they had learned that the greatest challenges were not the ones that lay before them, but the ones that lay within. And with that knowledge, they walked into the light. The mist curled around them, thickening as they ventured deeper into the void. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself resisted their progress. The young man and the woman moved cautiously, their eyes darting around in search of anything tangible in the endless white expanse. As they walked, the mist began to take on shapes vague at first, but gradually forming clearer images. The woman gasped as she recognized the familiar contours of a room from her childhood, a place where she had once sought comfort but now filled her with dread. The young man, too, saw the landscape of his memories, distorted by the fear and regret he had carried for so long. The mist pulled them into these visions, immersing them in scenes from their past. The woman found herself standing in the middle of her old bedroom, the walls closing in as memories flooded back, memories of loneliness, of crying herself to sleep as a child, believing she was unloved and unwanted. The weight of those emotions pressed down on her, threatening to drag her into the darkness she had fought so hard to escape. The young man, meanwhile, stood on a battlefield, a memory from a time when he had made a terrible choice, one that had cost the lives of those he cared about. The screams of the dying echoed in his ears, the sight of blood-stained ground haunting him as he relived the horror of that day. Guilt gnawed at his soul, whispering that he was unworthy of redemption, that he deserved nothing but to be consumed by his sins. The mist thickened around them, feeding on their fears and insecurities. The woman's heart pounded as she struggled to breathe, the walls of her childhood room now pressing against her chest, suffocating her. The young man fell to his knees on the battlefield, the weight of his guilt crushing him into the dirt, his strength sapped by the relentless torment. But in the depths of their despair, a flicker of something else stirred, something small but undeniable. It was the faint light of their shared bond, the connection that had grown between them through the trials they had faced together. Despite the overwhelming darkness, that light persisted, offering a glimmer of hope. The woman closed her eyes, forcing herself to focus on that light, to remember the moments of strength she had found in the young man's presence. He had stood by her side, unwavering, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. She realized that the darkness around her was a lie, a manifestation of the fear that had once controlled her, but no longer held power over who she had become. With a deep breath, she reached out, her fingers brushing the air where she knew the young man stood, even though the mist obscured her view. "You're not alone," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "We're in this together." The young man heard her voice, cutting through the cacophony of guilt and despair. It was a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge of oblivion. He gripped the earth beneath him, feeling its solidity, its reality, and reminded himself that this battlefield was not real, it was a reflection of his own mind. He was no longer that man, no longer defined by his past mistakes. He had the power to change, to forge a new path, just as the woman had done. With renewed determination, he pushed himself to his feet, the visions of the battlefield fading as he focused on the woman's voice. "I'm here," he called out, his voice gaining strength, "and we'll get through this together." The mist around them began to recede, the oppressive weight lifting as they found each other in the void. They clasped hands, the warmth of their touch, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness that had surrounded them moments before. The visions of their past dissolved completely, leaving them standing in the featureless expanse once more. But this time, they were not alone, and the fear that had gripped them was gone. The towering figure reappeared, its form still obscured by the mist, but no longer menacing. "You have faced your fears," it intoned, its voice deep and resonant. "You have confronted the darkness within, and you have emerged stronger for it. The veil of silence is now yours to cross." The figure gestured to the space before them, where the translucent veil they had first encountered shimmered into existence. It pulsed gently, its surface reflecting the light that now radiated from the young man and the woman, their bond having grown stronger through the trial. With a final nod to each other, they stepped forward, their hands still clasped as they approached the veil. The young man reached out, his fingers brushing against the surface just as the woman had done before. This time, the veil responded with a soft hum, vibrating with a warmth that welcomed them. They passed through the veil together, the world dissolving into light once more as they were transported to the other side, a side where the trials of the past no longer held sway, where their purpose awaited them. As the light around them faded, the young man and the woman found themselves standing on solid ground again. But this place was unlike anything they had seen before. The ground beneath their feet was a shimmering mosaic of colors, shifting and changing as if alive. The air was filled with a soft, melodic hum, the very essence of harmony and peace. They were standing on a vast plateau, overlooking a landscape that stretched out in all directions. In the distance, towering structures of crystalline beauty rose towards the sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of a sun that hung low on the horizon, casting the world in a golden glow. The woman breathed in deeply, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. The tension that had gripped her throughout the trials melted away, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. The young man gazed out at the landscape, his eyes wide with awe. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it feels right. Like this is where we were meant to be all along." As they stood there, taking in the beauty of their surroundings, they noticed something else: other figures, distant at first, but gradually becoming clearer as they approached. These figures were not like the towering entity they had encountered in the void. They were smaller, more human in appearance, though their forms seemed to shimmer with an ethereal light. The figures moved gracefully, almost floating across the ground as they approached the young man and the woman. When they were close enough to be seen clearly, the woman gasped these were not just any beings. They were the figures of people she recognized, people who had passed from her life long ago, but who had left a profound impact on her journey. One of the figures, a tall, serene woman with a kind smile, stepped forward. Her eyes were filled with a wisdom and compassion that radiated from her very being. "Welcome," she said, her voice melodic and soothing. "You have traveled far and faced many challenges, but now you are home." The young man looked at her, his heart pounding with recognition. This was the voice he had heard in his dreams, the voice that had guided him through the darkest moments of his life. "Who are you?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The woman smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. "I am part of you, just as you are part of me. We are all connected, woven together by the threads of our experiences, our hopes, and our fears. This place, this realm, is the culmination of your journey. It is where you come to understand your true purpose." The young man and the woman exchanged a glance, the weight of her words sinking in. This was no ordinary place. It was a realm beyond the physical, a place where the essence of who they were and what they had become was laid bare. The figures around them began to speak, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus. They spoke of love and loss, of struggle and triumph, of the paths that had led them here. Each voice was a thread in the tapestry of their lives, weaving together to form a picture of something greater than themselves. As they listened, the young man and the woman felt a deep sense of clarity and understanding. The trials they had faced were not just challenges, they were lessons, each one teaching them something vital about themselves and the world around them. They had been tested, and they had emerged stronger, more united, and more aware of their purpose. The tall woman stepped forward again, her expression gentle but serious. "The veil was not just a barrier, it was a gateway. You have crossed it because you have proven yourselves worthy. But your journey is not over. There is one final task you must complete, one final truth you must uncover." The young man nodded, his resolve firm. "We're ready." The woman smiled softly. "Then follow us." The figures turned and began to move towards the towering structures in the distance. The young man and the woman followed, their hearts steady and their minds clear. They knew that whatever awaited them at the end of this path would be the culmination of everything they had fought for. The crystalline towers loomed ever closer as the young man and the woman followed the ethereal figures. The air grew warmer, filled with the scent of blossoms that seemed to bloom from the very ground they walked on. The melodic hum intensified, resonating deep within their chests, as if the very air was alive with anticipation. The figures led them to the base of the largest tower, a structure that shimmered with an inner light. Its surface was smooth, reflecting the surroundings in a kaleidoscope of colors. At the base, a wide archway opened into the heart of the tower, inviting them inside. The woman hesitated for a moment, her hand still clasped in the young man's. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The young man squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Whatever's in there, we face it together." They stepped through the archway, and the world outside faded as they were enveloped by the warm glow of the tower's interior. The space within was vast and open, with walls that seemed to stretch into infinity. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single, glowing orb. The figures gathered around the pedestal, their forms shimmering as they took their places. The tall woman, who had spoken to them before, stood at the forefront, her eyes fixed on the young man and the woman. "This is the apex," she said, her voice echoing softly in the chamber. "The culmination of your journey, and the final step in your transformation." The young man and the woman approached the pedestal, their eyes locked on the glowing orb. It pulsed gently, radiating a warmth that was both comforting and powerful. They could feel its energy, a living force that seemed to resonate with every fiber of their being. "What is it?" the young man asked, his voice hushed in awe. The tall woman smiled. "It is the essence of everything you have learned, everything you have become. It is the final truth, the core of your existence. To touch it is to understand the true nature of who you are." The woman took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "And what happens once we touch it?" "You will know," the tall woman replied. "You will understand your purpose, your place in the universe, and you will be given the choice to embrace that truth or to turn away." The young man and the woman exchanged a glance, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. But there was no hesitation, no doubt in their minds. They had come this far together, and they would see it through to the end. They reached out, their hands hovering over the orb. It pulsed with a brighter light, as if sensing their presence, ready to reveal the truth that lay within. Together, they touched the orb. The moment their fingers made contact, the world around them exploded in light. It was not blinding, but rather a light that filled them with a sense of peace and clarity. The chamber, the figures, the tower, all of it dissolved into a vast expanse of pure light. In that light, they saw visions of their past, their present, and their future. They saw the lives they had touched, the choices they had made, and the paths that lay before them. They saw themselves as they truly were, stripped of all pretenses, all fears, and all doubts. They were not just individuals, they were part of something much greater, a vast, interconnected web of life and energy that spanned the universe. Every choice they had made, every trial they had faced, had led them to this moment, to this understanding. And in that moment, they knew their purpose. The light began to fade, gently returning them to the chamber within the tower. But they were changed. The young man and the woman stood there, their hands still touching the now dormant orb, their hearts filled with a profound sense of peace and certainty. The tall woman approached them, her expression serene. "You have seen the truth. You have faced the final trial. What will you do now?" The young man looked at the woman beside him, their bond stronger than ever. "We'll embrace it," he said, his voice steady. "We'll carry this truth with us and use it to guide us in everything we do." The woman nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. "We'll live our lives with purpose, knowing that we're part of something greater. We'll make the most of every moment and never forget what we've learned." The tall woman smiled, a look of deep satisfaction on her face. "Then you are ready. Go forth and live your truth. The world awaits you." With that, the figures began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light until only the young man and the woman remained. The chamber around them shifted, the walls of the tower becoming transparent, revealing the world outside, a world filled with endless possibilities, a world where they could shape their own destiny. Hand in hand, they walked towards the archway, leaving the tower behind. As they stepped out into the warm light of the sun, they felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deep understanding of who they were and what they were meant to do. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with trials and tribulations, but they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. And as they set off into the unknown, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For they had found their truth, and that truth would guide them for the rest of their days.